because the graduates, probably Germany in one sense is a bad example because they have had these long-standing relationships between industry and academia right across Germany. Well, indeed, I mean, the Netherlands will be the same. I mean, often you would say that Delft University, Shell University, or Leiden University, as Gareth is from, is actually Philips University, because there's a very, very strong links. But their universities, for example, at Leiden, they would have joint appointments between professors who were jointly appointed as vice presidents in Philips and university full-time professors as well. So those links are very powerful and very strong. The real challenge is, of course, how do you embed those in systems that don't have that kind of tradition? Now some more data for your entertainment. The Moore study, this is the third. There was Moore 1, 2, and this is Moore 3. It's carried out by the European Commission. And this is a survey of over 10,000 researchers across Europe. So a pretty comprehensive survey. And what's really interesting about this, and I think it's always important to look at data because you hear a lot of talk, you get certain impressions about things. Everybody talks about structured doctoral programs, about the old system of academic apprenticeship of one student, one supervisor, etc., etc. And there's this idea generated that it's all gone, it's in the past. But the fact of the matter is it's not. 56% of doctoral candidates across Europe are still on the old-fashioned single supervisor system. It's as simple as that, despite all the nice things you hear. 15% yes are in doctoral schools. Nearly 30% have supervisory committees. Now that can mean, a supervisory committee can mean a lot of different things. Doctoral schools, at least, you have a reasonable idea about what you mean by that. So, more than half of doctoral candidates across Europe are in the old system. That is quite difficult, in fact, unless you have the supervisor has good relationships with non-academic organisations where people have placements or any kind of internships. And it works very well with doctoral schools because this can be really well organised in a structured manner where you have partners as companies. If you look at the skills training that people get across Europe, you're looking at 33% of PhD candidates are getting training. Now, there's often this assumption, again about training and skills, everybody gets it. They don't. It's only a third of researchers across Europe. Again, this is based on pretty good data. And there you see the majority of the skills they acquire are in the area of research, disciplinary research skills, where people are going in doing specialist statistics courses or whatever. Ones on ethics have increased, and which is unsurprising. And the other one I didn't realise, 60% nearly are getting ones on proposal writing, and entrepreneurship 38%. Some interesting data then on career progression is that across Europe, let's say average completion times for PhDs about 4.7 years. Now, remember, this is across all disciplines, all countries, so it's highly varied. If you read the report, you will find country data in there as well, more detailed information per country. Last piece of data I'll give you here on this. Researchers were asked about their impression, because remember, what did they think was going to be important in terms of career progression and recruitment. And one thing you see is at the bottom of this is intersectional mobility. That being said, it was still about 57, 58% were saying that these things were important as far as career progression and recruitment is concerned. That's quite an interesting piece of data as well. And even though it's low down, it's still in this pyramid. I mean, the international mobility is seen as the highest, followed by transferable skills, alternative forms of research output, interdisciplinary mobility, intersectional mobility. In terms of internships outside of academia for researchers, for PhDs, this is the data here, and it gives it about 12.9%. Let's say 13% of doctoral candidates in Ireland have internships of whatever type outside of academia. What's interesting when you look at the data is the countries with the highest amounts. I mean, Denmark is particularly high at 32%, but they've always had a drive to have strong relationships between academia and in particular industry in Denmark. But the The Eastern countries in Europe have always been very high as well. If you look at, say, Bulgaria, 25%, Croatia, 32%, 46% for the Czech Republic. But this is also due to histories. The history of how industry was viewed in the let's say, the communist period up to 1990, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, that those links were always very strong. So it's not particularly surprising there. So the question is, can you change this? Can you change the system in a way? Because when you look at some of the parameters that are there, you have a situation where the doctoral candidate registers in the university, walks in the door, so within the four walls of the university for the 3 to 4 to 5 years they're doing their doctorate. The supervisor is an academic. Now there's some expectation by people, oh, the supervisor should tell them about careers outside academia. Yeah, well if you get apprenticed to a plumber, after 2 years, the plumbers hardly like to tell you how to go become a banker. You know, it's the same idea. Academics are not competent for this job. It's not what they do. And they shouldn't be made to do. It's very simple. However, what there does need to be the space here, protected space for doctoral candidates to have those opportunities. Because often that's their biggest issue, is that the research so much dominates, especially, and this goes back to the people outside structured doctoral programs. They're sort of, they're third in the firing line in the sense that most of PhD candidates are funded through projects, large-scale projects. They're not, they don't have direct funding there. There's very small amounts of direct scholarship type funding for PhDs. There's some for structured doctoral training, but most people are out of that zone. And they only see their supervisor. They're on a research project. There are demands to be met. There's KPIs. There's outputs all to be reached. So their value is simply to be, if you really wanted to put it in a certain way, they're a form of indentured labour. Because remember, if you don't do what you're told, you won't get a good recommendation to get another job. You can't leave without your passport out. You can't get your passport out. You can't get your PhD out. You do all the work.